Good day everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I will talk you through the Smith Morra Gambit, the main idea of this gambit, and what are the pros and cons of this line for both the white and the black players. I will explain to you as well how to play safely and effectively against it. So if you are a Sicilian Defence player or even getting to know the Sicilian Defence, this video will be a good guide for you, exposing you to different lines and variations along this powerful gambit that white can play. I'm Rami and this is just shorts and sweets, and today we will be discussing accepting the gambit. Other variations including declining on the gambit will be explained in other videos, so stay tuned. And also at the end of this video I will explain to you how to execute a powerful and tricky trap against the white player, so you could win the game easily, so stay tuned as well. So come on, grab your favorite drink, your chessboard and of course your notebook to take notes, and let's start. So here the first question to answer is why the Smith Morra Gambit? Why white would play this gambit against the Sicilian Defence? So the main idea here is that white is willing to sacrifice a pawn, and instead they will get a quicker development and quicker castling as well. So that could be translated as e4 c5, the Sicilian defense, and then d4, and here white is offering the gambit. Declining on the gambit can be done by many moves. You can go d6 or d5, you can go e6 or g6, queen c7 as well is also an option, but as mentioned we will focus on accepting the gambit today and play c takes d4. After you take the pawn here, white will offer another pawn by playing c3, and after you take, white will take back with the knight, and here let's assess this position for a minute. This is the fourth move, and white has got already a minor piece developed, a pawn in the center. White is ready to go knight f3 and then bishop to c4 and then castle. So white has fulfilled two important elements in the opening, which are development and castling. On the other hand, white has got no two central pawns anymore, so there is no central pawn on that d file, and of course black is an extra pawn. So these are the main disadvantages for white playing this gambit, but as you can see, white has got a huge compensation for that. Also, this bishop here on the c4 and that knight here on the f3, they both can attack aggressively at the king side here. So for example, if that knight jumps to the e5 square, both the knight here and the bishop can exert a great exertion and pressure here on the f7 square. So white has got the initiative for an early attack, and that means on the other hand black has to do or to execute some prophylactic moves to prevent this attack. And more importantly here, these prophylactic moves include d6 to take control or to defend the e5 square, and a6 as well to defend the b5 square. Here one major disadvantage for black is that they would lose time in their development as well, because you will have to execute these prophylactic moves, and that will take time from your development, so you have to be prepared for this as well if you are defending against the Smith Morra Gambit. So the game carries on, knight to c6, knight to f3, and then d6, that's the first prophylactic move to control or to defend the e5 square, and bishop c4. After that, the recommended move, the best move for you to play a6. Again, to defend that square, the b5 square. If you feel that you are losing time moving your pawns around, and you want to develop your minor pieces as well, you still can go knight f6. But here you have to be prepared for this move, e5. This move can be annoying for you, and the best square, the safest square for that knight here is to go on the g4. Why not any other square, or why not any other move you can play? Let's take a look. If you decided to take with the knight here, so knight takes e5, white can take back with the knight, and you are no longer able to take with that pawn. Because if you did so, black has this powerful deflection, bishop takes f7 check, and the only move for the king is to take the bishop. You can't move your king here because this queen is taking control over the d-file. So after you take the bishop, white will take your queen for free. So taking with the knight is not a good idea. Let's see what will happen if you take with the pawn. So d takes e5. It's not a bad move in itself, but you have to be prepared for the most common move here for white in this position, which is queen takes d8 check. And here the best for you is to take with the knight, not with the king. So let's see what will happen if you take with the king. So if you take with the king, so king takes d8, you have this square here undefended, and that can be a very beautiful outpost for that knight. So white can simply go with the knight to g5, threatening to take on the f7 check, forking both the rook and the king. And in this position, if you ever faced with this position, the best for you to move your knight to b5, to a5, threatening that bishop. And here white has to move this bishop away, for example to b5. If white didn't, and they were greedy, took on the f7 with a check, you move your king back to e8, and yes, you've lost a rook here, but this bishop is for free, and that knight is actually trapped. White cannot do much to save that knight, so for one rook, white has lost two minor pieces, and here black is better. So again, if queen takes the 8 check, you have to take with your knight here. And here white has no longer enjoying the threat they used to have. Even if they played something like knight to b5, they are threatening here to jump again on the c7 square, forking both the king and the rook. And here the best for you is to move your rook to b8. That's the best move, and after knight to c7 check, you can move your king safely to d7, threatening that knight, and then the knight can retreat back to b5. And the game is more or less equal here. After a6, and then knight takes with a check, you move back your king to e7, and the game again is more or less equal. In this position here, if white is threatening to jump on the c7 square, if the white is threatening to jump with the knight on the c7 square, you don't want to move your king to d7. And why is that? Because this is checkmate in 2. After white play knight takes e5 check, the king is no longer having access to much squares, so the king cannot move to that square because of this bishop. The king cannot move to this square because of that knight, and the same applies to this square as well. The king cannot escape to the c6 square because the knight is taking control, so the only move here for the king to retreat back on e8 and knight to c7 checkmate. So here you don't want to move your king to the d7. I know some of you in a blitz game or a rapid game may think about that move, but this move is really dangerous, so avoid it. Alright, so we've discussed the safest move to play in different positions. However, let's go back to bishop c4, and then the recommended move again here is a6, and after that white short castles. The game carries on, knight to f6, and here bishop to f4. White is developing the pieces, and you have to be familiar with the most common format white will play for. So most commonly after bishop f4, white is aiming to get the queen to the e2, get that rook here on the f1 square to the d1 square, and the other rook to the c1 square. So white would enjoy these two files. This file is open and this file is semi-open, so that's the usual formation for white here in the Smith Morra Gambit. After bishop to f4, you can play bishop to g4. That's a good move as well. And if white threats your bishop, it's okay to trade material here. And after white takes with the queen, remember that you no longer have access for that knight to the square. Because if we take a look back, here you can actually play e6, and after queen to e2 you can play knight to h5, threatening that bishop. And the best for white here is to retreat to e3, and you get your minor pieces developed. So bishop to e7, again the common formation for white. So the rook on the f square moves to d1, and you get other piece developed as well. And then rook on the a square moves to c1, and you short castle, and the game carries on. So that's not a problem. Shouldn't be a problem for you. The game is more or less equal here. Alright, now let me talk you through about the famous trap you can set for white if they play the Smith Morra Gambit against the Sicilian Defence. So here the game carries on as usual. e4, c5, d4 offering the gambit, you accept the gambit, another pawn is offered, you take, and white takes back. And after knight c6 and knight f3, that's the usual move. Here instead of going d6, you can go e6 instead. You are actually preparing this bishop to either move to the d6 square or the b4 square, taking control of these two diagonals. And here white would go the same line they know for the Smith Morra Gambit, developing the bishop to c4, you get your knight to f6, white will short castle, preparing to move the queen to e2, and then get that rook to d1, this rook to c1, and while white is busy preparing for their usual formation, you can go queen c7 here. And here you are aiming for that pawn on the h2. So you are preparing for an attack, attacking this weak point here, which is for now only defended by the king. White will carry on their usual formation, and here it was better for white to play h3 before moving the queen to the e2 square. And why is that? Because not moving this pawn here, this square is ready for that knight. So you go knight g4, and now you're threatening a checkmate here only if you could get rid of this knight, which is defending the h2 square. And here only if white plays h3, for example, that's a major blunder. So you execute that trap only if white plays h3. Yeah, Why is that? Because you can now play knight to d4. You're threatening the queen, you're threatening the knight. After getting rid of that knight, you could play easily queen to h2 checkmate. And here white is confused about what to do. Should they defend their queen? Should they take that knight? Let's see what will happen. Or what white options here. If white takes with the knight, that's a checkmate in one. So after you threat here, white cannot take with the knight. And the same goes if the queen, for example, move back to e1. Here you can go knight takes f3 check, and after g takes, that's queen to h2 checkmate as well. So that's also not a good option for white. So what is the best option for white after this blunder move here? And after you move your knight, threatening the queen and the knight, it's best for white here to take that knight and leave the queen for you to take. And after white takes with the bishop, you play bishop c5, and black here is much better. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please stay tuned for more videos explaining how to execute the traps. I welcome all your comments and suggestions for even better quality of videos. I'm happy for you to share anything you would like to share with me. I hope you guys enjoy your day, and I hope I'll see you soon.